A slew of Facebook users reporting cloned accounts. Authorities now have reason to believe that the proliferation of the fake profiles is more than just a technical glitch. The palace sees a relaxing of quarantine protocols in the offing as they claim a decline in fresh cases. Despite that, COVID cases in the country today breached 22,000. 4 out of the PISTON 6 have been set free on bail, while 8 protesters in UP Cebu have also been ordered released. A number of passengers spent sleepless nights in Naiya, all hoping for flights to bring them home. And one country is doing away with restrictions. New Zealand has claimed victory over COVID-19. We begin tonight's newscast with thousands of reported cloned Facebook accounts. Several government agencies are now probing what experts believe is more than just a technical snafu. But one cybersecurity expert warns finding the perpetrators is more difficult than it seems. Shaila Francisco with the story.
Over the weekend, Facebook users flooded social media to complain about the duplicator dummy accounts on the platform. Most of the accounts do not have details or pictures. Format of the links to these profiles are also similar. Sam, for one, discovered on Sunday that she has 13 duplicate accounts, some of which are still active despite being reported by her friend.
I was thinking na maybe my name is common, parang wala lang. And then I realized, actually, I'm quite vocal about politics and whatnot on social media. Then I thought, this could be bad for my name. What if the person shares something na parang that aren't my feelings, or they try to get money?
Some students also reported that their duplicate accounts are now messaging them and tagging them as terrorists. The College Editors Guild of the Philippines is convinced that this is related to the anti-terrorism bill, since most of the victims are students who are vocal about their opposition.
Nababanggit kasi dito yung yung mga political na usapin. We see this as something na coordinated attacks talaga, na it's na to ini-intimidate ba kumbaga yung mga students to not speak up regarding this issue. Tapos it's a form of intimidation, and ayun nga, tinatry nilang ipatimikin.
A cybersecurity expert explains that while it's easy to create duplicate accounts, it will be difficult to identify the perpetrators and the intent, since the accounts created show very little information.
It's not something that we would say requires, hindi po siya parang hacker type na ang pinaka-straightforward kung iisipin natin is you get a group of people together, look at Facebook profiles, and do it manually. So definitely yun po, logistically speaking, if you have the right number of people, madali lang po. Anyone with there are also other ways to do this that involve some level of parang programming. I-automate natin yung pagkuha ng personal details, o kaya naman kung galing sa isang external database, transferring that to Facebook accounts.
Gutierrez says the perpetrators may have gotten the information from an existing database or from a Facebook activity, since Facebook is linked to a lot of applications and services. In the meantime, the best thing to do is to report any dummy account immediately.
We need to exercise caution and assume for the moment na nandun yung possibility na na-compromise yung identity nila. I'm almost certain there's something common dito sa mga profiles na nagagaya. Ang common dito is may mga ginamit silang apps or service. Baka may mga na-visit silang website or na-click na links recently.
Gutierrez advises social media users to check their privacy settings and to refrain from using the same password. You could also protect your identity through limiting details posted online, being careful in adding Facebook friends, and monitoring all the links in the applications used or clicked on social media. As of Sunday night, the DOJ Office of Cybercrime received 112 reports of dummy or duplicate accounts. This could increase since some have 2 or more dummy accounts. They are also coordinating with Facebook to preserve data pending investigation. Computer-related identity theft under Cybercrime Prevention Act is one of the violations being looked into. Shaila Francisco, WR1 News.
The National Privacy Commission, or NPC, believes the proliferation of dummy Facebook accounts is not a mere technical glitch. In an interview with One News's Agenda, NPC Commissioner Raymond Liboro said there seems to be a systematic effort put into the creation of imposter accounts. Both the Justice Department and the Philippine National Police have ordered an investigation into the matter. In a statement, Facebook says fake accounts that fail the company's authenticity checks will be removed. Several Facebook users, mostly coming from academic institutions, have complained of the emergence of clone accounts bearing their names.
We would really like to know the extent and depth of this activity. I was asking them earlier if this has been something that has been common. We know that imposter accounts, dummy accounts, and even cloning is one of the regular risks or threats that we encounter in Facebook. But is there a systematic effort on this one? These matters are still to be determined.
For its part, Malacanang nixed speculations that the government is using the fake accounts to go after its critics. Presidential spokesman Harry Roque singled out Bayan Muna Representative Carlos Zarate, who warned that the fake profiles might be a prelude to a crackdown once the anti-terrorism bill is enacted.
If Congressman Zarate has the evidence, file the corresponding charge. Pero sa panahon po ng pandemya, sana iwasan na yung mga ganitong conclusions na wala namang ebidensya. But of course, the courts and the fiscal's office are open. Kung talagang ganyan ang tingin niyang nangyayari, magsampa po siya. Pero for now, sapat po ng ating Privacy Commission is investigating the matter. And I think the NBI is also investigating this matter.
Meanwhile, COVID-19 cases in the Philippines exceed 22,000 today. That's after the Health Department tallied 579 new cases, 331 of which are fresh cases, while 248 are late cases. The agency also reported 8 new COVID-19 deaths, bringing total fatalities to 1,011. Over 4,600 have recovered from the SARS-like disease, with 107 new recoveries. Meanwhile, Health's Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere said that the agency is saddened by the death of a PNP doctor who passed away after inhaling disinfectant chemicals from misting. Vergere reiterates a memorandum which strongly urges the public to avoid spraying and misting for COVID-19.
There is insufficient evidence to support large-scale misting, fogging, or spraying both indoors and outdoors as an effective disinfection or decontamination strategy in non-healthcare setting that kills the SARS-CoV-2 virus which causes COVID-19.
Malacanang says new quarantine classifications may be announced next week. In Monday's Laging Handa briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque claimed that they are noticing a decline in the number of fresh COVID-19 cases in the country, giving authorities more elbow room to ease protocols.
So I would say that it is a safe conclusion na magkakaroon na naman po ng reclassification, except iba po ang data talaga ng Metro Manila. So I think Metro Manila will have to be examined closer.
Meanwhile, Roque hinted that President Rodrigo Duterte may deliver his State of the Nation address next month using alternative ways, and that a blended SONA is a possibility.
I think kung meron tayong blended learning, we will also have a blended SONA.
The spokesman also reiterated that the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act is effective until June 25 only. That's after lawmakers failed to pass a measure extending the law. Roque noted, however, that a stimulus bill is in the works. The government has deployed new bus routes to address commuter woes on the second week of the general community quarantine in Metro Manila. But several passengers are still struggling to adjust with the limited transportation options. JC Cosico tells us more.
Several commuters braved the heat and waited for hours to ride a bus to work from Monumento in Caloocan City this morning. It's the second week of GCQ in Metro Manila, yet public transportation remains to be a challenge for many.
Napakahirap, sobra. Kasi nga, ang init-init eh. Tapos, ang layo pa ng babaan namin sa LRT, lalakarin lang namin papunta dito. Sana, bumalik na yung kahit bus man lang na diretso ng dito, na hindi na kami transfer pa.
Dennis, who works as a painter at a construction site in San Jose del Monte, Bulacan, waited early for a bus ride in Monumento after learning that the government has already deployed additional buses. But he was disappointed.
Alam namin may biyahe ngayon. Wala naman biyahe. Puro Marilaw lang eh. Puro? Marilaw. Malayo. Malayo pag nagmarilaw kami. Saan doon kami ngayon? Wala, baka umuwi na lang kami.
The Transportation Department and the LTFRB have opened 4 more bus routes today. These are Monumento to Valenzuela Gateway Complex, Monumento to San Jose del Monte, Bulacan, Gilmore to Taytay, and Buendia to BGC. Over 200 bus units were authorized to ply these routes, but transport authorities have yet to release the number of actual buses dispatched. So far, the government has opened 12 of the total 31 rationalized bus routes in Metro Manila. 29 bus routes are expected to open before June 21. The remaining 2 routes, Cubao to Doroteo Jose and Calentong to Pasig, have no bus operator applicants as of June 4.
Well, it will depend on the readiness of the bus operators. And at the same time, we are conducting the daily assessments. So we base on actual reports and data from the ground. So kung ano yung mga areas na nire-report na kailangan talaga ng public transport dahil kulang, yun yung mga unang areas na in-open natin.
The DOTR also asked the public to understand bus operators on why the number of bus units plying the newly opened routes are few. But should this continue, the agency says they will be summoned.
Bigyan lang natin ng kaunti pang panahon yung ating mga bus operators. We understand na yung mga bus operators, hinahanda rin yung mga unit nila kasi remember, they have to be equipped with social distancing marks, disinfection equipment, among others.
Meantime, the DOTR has yet to allow provincial buses in Metro Manila as it will need the coordination of LGUs. But the Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange or PITX, which caters southern Manila, has reopened partially starting today. As for bus drivers, conductors, and dispatchers, though they know they can only load a small number of passengers per trip to respond to the health protocols of the government. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
We'll pause for a short break, but when the big story returns, the Piston 6, save for 2, are now out on bail, while over in Cebu, 8 rallies against the anti-terrorism bill have been ordered released. And flight cancellations led to some passengers spending the night at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. More big stories when we come back. De Los Santos, and you're watching The Big Story. Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong tones down his stance against San Juan City Mayor Francis Zamora, who is under fire for defying Baguio's checkpoint protocols. Malacanang, meanwhile, reminds public leaders to practice what they preach. Pat Mangune with a story.
Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong seems to have slightly walked back on San Juan City Mayor Francis Zamora's quarantine protocol breach. In a statement, Magalong urged the public to refrain from prejudging his fellow mayor who defied Baguio's checkpoint protocol along with his entourage of 30 last June 5. Magalong says the public's displeasure over the incident is understandable but urged them to leave the issue to the courts. For its part, Malacanang urged public leaders to set an example to their constituents by abiding to local and national safety protocols in line with the pandemic. However, presidential spokesman Harry Roque says it is better to leave the matter to the PNP.
Iniiwan po natin ang investigasyon ng kasong ito sa ating kapulisan, but I appeal to everyone, kinakailangan po magsilbing halimbawa ang lahat.
Earlier today, NCRPO Director Major General Debold Sinas ordered that 5 San Juan cops be relieved from their posts. The Metro's top cop says the 5 policemen who escorted Zamora's convoy in Baguio will be reassigned to the NCRPO's Regional Personnel Holding and Accounting Unit. The NCRPO has yet to decide if San Juan's Chief of Police will likewise be relieved.
We have relieved the PNCOs ngayon, no, kasi kahapon lang naman sila nag-report galing sa Baguio, pinag-explain na sila. It's the regional IAS ang nautusan. It came from directive from DCA. As to the Chief of Police, hindi ko pa po siya nirelieve. I will confer with the Chief PNP kung anong appropriate siya kasi kasama rin po siya sa pinag-explain po ng IAS. As to whether to leave it or not, wala pa kaming recommendations.
The Baguio police said Zamora's convoy drove past a checkpoint on Cannon Road last Friday without presenting their medical health clearances. Zamora has already apologized to Magalong, saying there was just a miscommunication at the checkpoint. The Baguio mayor earlier confirmed that Zamora's party breached the local government safety protocols, noting that no one, regardless of rank and position, is exempted from the city's checkpoint rules. For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
These are the other big stories today. 4 of the 6 jeepney drivers who were detained after protesting their job losses in Caloocan City earlier this month are now out on bail. The Caloocan City Trial Court issued the release order earlier today after the so-called Piston 6 posted bail. However, only 4 were freed as the 2 others still have pending previous cases. One of them is 72-year-old Elmer Cordero, whose supposed estafa case could not be verified today. The 6 jeepney drivers were charged with disobedience to social distancing, mass gathering, and resistance to persons in authority for holding a protest against the government's ban on passenger jeepneys under the general community quarantine. Regional Court orders the release of 8 people arrested during an anti-terror bill rally at the University of the Philippines in Cebu. The defense is given 10 days to comment on the charges. The National Union of People's Lawyers Cebu says it welcomes the order for the release of the so-called Cebu 8, who were arrested last Friday morning. The University of the Philippines Manila and the University of Santo Tomas said that the government should focus on fighting COVID-19 instead of prioritizing the anti-terrorism bill. In a statement, UP Manila said that the proposed Anti-Terrorism Act will be used by the government to silence and suppress opposition. In a statement, UST also warned that the proposed legislation would gradually debilitate the exercise of civil liberties with harmful results. And the Commission on Higher Education sees a possible increase in tuition and other fees in private higher education institutions, which are forced to move the start of the academic year to August. The Education Department, meanwhile, reiterates that face-to-face or physical classes are postponed in compliance with President Rodrigo Duterte's directive. With local governments canceling the arrival of domestic flights in their jurisdictions, passengers are left without a choice but to spend the night in NAIA. Gerard de la Peña has the details.
Christina has had 3 sleepless nights in the airport since Friday. She has been waiting for a flight to General Santos, originally scheduled on Saturday, but the flight was cancelled as the local government decided to declare its airport closed after accepting 2 flights from Manila last week. Together with about 200 passengers, they spent the night at the airport and later on at the public school in Villamor Air Base.
Wala kang maayos na higaan, walang maayos na tulog, kain, ganun. Tapos yung init, tawag dito, titiisin mo talaga.
Jade, who was also applying for a job in Oman, was not informed that her flight to Davao last Saturday was cancelled. She decided to wait in the airport as she also has nowhere to stay.
Nakakadismaya po. Kasi ang hirap dito hindi na kasi kami pwedeng bumalik doon sa agency kasi nga exposed na kami dito sa labas. Kasi may naiwan pa din po doon sa accommodation namin.
On Monday morning, stranded passengers piled up at the arrival area of NAIA Terminal 3 as they tried their luck to be flown to their provinces, which are still not accepting passengers from elsewhere.
The check-in area, or anywhere inside the terminal for that matter, could have been a much more comfortable place for stranded passengers to spend the night in. But airport authorities decided not to let them in to avoid contamination of the place and further spread of COVID-19.
The Transportation Department has coordinated with local government units to allow stranded passengers to come home.
Nagko-coordinate naman kami sa mga airline para naman malaman natin kung ano ang plano ng airline at kung may plano sila, pabilisin natin para hindi na rin magtagal dito yung mga kababayan natin dahil mas matagal na sila sa mga pinanggalingan nila Kailangan na rin nilang makauwi.
Cebu Pacific, where most of the stranded passengers were booked, said the tickets were booked before the local government of Davao announced that it is allowing the opening of its airport only on June 8.
Nangyayari ngayon, hindi naman to actually new bookings Most of these are yung nagre-rebook nung flight. So kumbaga meron na silang noon pa na booking or ticket, nag-rebook lang po sila. And that's why we have been quite conservative in announcing our flights dahil gusto namin yung kahit paano sure na po na pumayag na po or may approval na po ng national government at ng local government once kami po ay nag-announce.
Aviation authorities have asked airline companies to coordinate first with local government units before selling seats to passengers. The airport management has made an appeal to passengers, especially those who are eager to go back home to the provinces.
So kaya nga ho sana kami nakikiusap sa banda ng authority na kung hindi po kayo confirm, huwag muna ho kayong pumunta sa paliparan. We have to exercise humanitarian consideration din dito. Pero that doesn't go without saying na inaalaw natin at pinapayagan na sila mag-camp out doon. Kasi hindi maganda at saka hindi komportable para sa kanila. Kawawa naman po.
The stranded passengers were brought to Villamor Air Base for rapid testing while waiting for the exact time of their departure. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
Transport Network vehicle service drivers gave free rides to commuters along Commonwealth Avenue in Quezon City. Around 100 TNVS drivers pick up stranded commuters from Doña Carmen Subdivision to MRT North Avenue Station. 2 passengers were allowed to board per sedan, while 4 passengers were allowed on a 6-seater vehicle. Laban TNVS continues to appeal to the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board. The regulatory body only allowed around 18,000 out of the 50,000 TNVS drivers to operate since the resumption of public transportation.
Kami po sa Laban TNVS ay maasa sa LTFRB na dagdagan ang mga bumabiyahe pang TNVS driver. Ngayon po, habang hindi pa po kami bumabiyahe at hindi pa kami allowed na pinapayagan ng LTFRB, sa ngayon po, magbibigay muna kami ng libreng serbisyo para sa ating mga kababayan dito sa Commonwealth.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Stay with us here on One News. This is a big story, and I'm Jess De Los Santos. The government says bike lanes along Metro Manila's major thoroughfares will soon be constructed. This comes after advocacy groups recommended this to ensure the safety of workers amid the pandemic. Gerard de la Peña tells us more.
The government has come up with a plan to put up bike lanes across Metro Manila only after more than 2 months of lockdown. According to the Transportation Department and the Metro Manila Development Authority, the move to transfer the bus lane along EDSA is just a start. Up next is the construction of an elevated pedestrian walkway and bike lane.
Yung mga buses po na dating nasa kanan, nalipat po sa kaliwa. Yung 3 lanes po para sa pribadong sasakyan, babawasan po ng lapad yan. Pag nabawasan po ang lapad yan, may susobra po na 1 meters to 1.5 meters. No? Ididikit po ito sa sidewalk elevated. protected. Meron po mga railings, no? May bike racks, kompleto po yan.
Aside from major thoroughfares, the interagency group is also prioritizing the creation of bike paths around hospitals to make it easier for healthcare workers to travel. The Public Works Department, for its part, said bike lanes have been incorporated in the construction of new roads, heeding the recommendations of a study by the Asian Development Bank. It states that bike lanes will help ease traffic congestion as most trips can be done by bike or on foot.
Feeling namin this is really the way to go, and that we should also build additional pedestrian infrastructure, not just in Metro Manila, but all over the Philippines. I mean, this has been the trend in other countries, and we feel na this will also be advantageous and beneficial for Filipinos.
The construction of bike lanes along major roads will take 1 month upon the release of budget from the DOTR, but bikers can't wait. And all they ask for now is a temporary bike path that will keep them safe on the road while the metro is still under quarantine.
Years na naman ba hihintayin? Nasa crisis tayo ngayon, may pandemic, we don't have choice. So, habang walang ganon, we hope that we were able to show na through the initiative na ginawa namin, na pag gusto naman, kaya eh.
For now, several local government units, such as San Juan and Taguig, have set up their own bike lanes. The MMDA asks bikers to await the construction of bike paths and be careful treading the streets in the meantime. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
Meralco customers can expect a bit of a reduction in their June bills as a power distributor announced a slight downward adjustment in its power rates. Customers consuming 200 kilowatt hour per month can expect a 4 peso reduction in their power bills. This is because Meralco is slashing rates in June by 0.02 pesos per kilowatt hour, bringing it down to 8 pesos and 73 centavos per kilowatt hour. The adjustment in rates is brought by the power distributor invoking the force majeure provision in its power supply agreements.
Kung hindi namin in-invoke itong force majeure claims, generation charge and the total rate would have increased by 18 centavos and 24 centavos respectively from last month's rate.
The Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System Regulatory Office says there will be no tariff adjustments on customers' water bills in the third quarter of the year. This covers the regulator's service areas including Metro Manila, Bulacan, Rizal, and Cavite. The MWSS adds that it will retain the prevailing second quarter foreign currency differential adjustment or FCDA that is being followed by concessionaires Manila Water and Maynilad. The FCDA is a corrective mechanism to avoid under-recovery or over-recovery of concessionaires caused by foreign exchange movements. St. Luke's Medical Center, a global city in Taguig, launches its drive-through laboratory testing. The hospital management says patients will no longer have to go to the lab for different types of blood tests under the so-called new normal. All patients have to do is to drive up to the hospital where med techs are already waiting. They will approach the patient's vehicle and get the samples inside the comfort of their cars. The lab tests, however, are limited and do not include COVID-19 swab or rapid test and drug test, among others. New Zealand has eradicated COVID-19 across their country after the last known infected person recovered. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said her government will now focus on the nation's borders, where isolation and quarantine will continue. Ardern revealed that she danced around her living room when told about the milestone. Experts say a number of factors, including the immediate imposition of lockdowns, have helped New Zealand wipe out the SARS-like disease. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Jess De Los Santos, and we are One News. Good evening.